So today we begin with the second half of the chapter, equilibrium, and the second part 2 of this chapter is called ionic equilibria. Today is the fourth day of myself, trying to deal with the chapter equilibrium, and it is called ionic equilibria. And now let us introduce what is ionic equilibrium. Let's try to understand. Okay. Now, in chemical equilibrium, we studied reactions involving molecules only. In chemical equilibrium, we studied reactions which involved only molecules, only molecules. But here in ionic equilibrium, we will study reversible reactions involving formation of ions in water. When solute is polar covalent compound, then it reacts with water to form ions. So remember this. So here in ionic equilibrium, we're learning about reversible reactions which result in the formation of ions, and those ions are in equilibrium with the reacting species. Okay, so now here, moving to the next slide in this chapter, we can see the equilibrium that involves ions in aqueous solution is referred to as ionic equilibrium. For example, if you see ferric chloride with say potassium thiocyanate KSCN, okay, thiocyanate SCN ion, it's aqueous over here. It is in equilibrium with this complex solution. So here this is an example of ionic equilibrium on the screen. Now substances on the basis of interaction with water. So electrolytes are those substances which allow electricity to pass through them. Now, depending upon how much electricity is passed through them or depending upon the degree of dissociation, the electrolytes have been classified into strong electrolytes and weak electrolytes. Strong electrolytes examples are sodium hydroxide, potassium hydroxide, hydrochloric acid, sulfuric acid, because they have high degree of dissociation. Whereas weak electrolytes examples are acetic acid and ammonium hydroxide, their dissociation is very low, degree of dissociation is weak. Okay, so and on the other hand, we have non-electrolytes do not allow the passage of current, that means they have 0 degree of dissociation. Okay, so the third example of weak electrolyte over here on the screen is formic acid. Now factors which affect degree of dissociation is dielectric constant of medium, nature of electrolyte, temperature and concentration. These are the important factors which affect the degree of dissociation of an electrolyte. So the first one being dielectric constant. So what is dielectric constant? Dielectric constant, it's a constant. It is it is a factor which opposes the movement of electrons or current in that medium. So if the dielectric constant is high, it will not allow the dissociation to happen. So if it is low, it will allow. Okay, so that is how we understand the factors affecting degree of dissociation, okay, of an electrolyte, which can be strong or which can be weak. Okay, now moving to the what do you call textbook. Moving to the textbook, you can see on page number, I told you it's page number 452, page 452 in a textbooks. You can keep your textbook open or you can follow my screen also. Now over here, if you look at the explanation over here, the solutions which allow the passage of current through them, they are known as electrolytic solutions straight away. Such solutions consist of ions, and due to the presence of ions, they are able to conduct the electric current. So the very fact that ions are there, it is conducting electric current. Okay, so that's why they are called electrolytic solutions. The properties of an electrolytic solution are decided by the nature of the ions present in it. What type of ions are there? In an electrolytic solution, there exists an equilibrium between the ions and the undissociated molecules of the substance forming the solution. This equilibrium is termed as ionic equilibrium. So the equilibrium between the ions and the undissociated molecules of the substance, it is called ionic equilibrium, which we shall study in the chapter ahead. So let us go down further. Ionic equilibrium in solution. And that equilibrium in solution can be studied in case of strong electrolytes, weak electrolytes as well. Okay, in the case of reversible reactions. Now, we know a large number of chemical reactions are carried out in solutions, particularly mostly in aqueous solutions. These reactions play a very significant role in chemistry. The study of equilibria involving ions in aqueous solution is very important in both qualitative as well as in quantitative analysis and in several industrial operations. Some important aspects of ionic equilibria have been discussed below. Okay, so let us see electrolytes and non-electrolytes. This word is not new to all of you. You already have come across these words, electrolytes and non-electrolytes. Now, water soluble substances can be broadly, remember, water soluble substances can be broadly be classified into the categories below. Electrolytes, the substances which dissociate into ions in aqueous solution, they are called electrolytes. Otherwise, if they don't dissociate, then it can be non-electrolytes as well. Now, further, these are mostly ionic compounds and possess oppositely charged ions held together by electrostatic forces of attraction. When dissolved in water, the electrostatic forces responsible for holding ions together get weakened under the influence of high diatic constant of water. Water has a high diatic constant, it is capable of breaking those electrostatic forces of attraction. So that's why the ions get separated. This process it is called dissociation, or in other words, you can call it also ionization. For example, if you look at sodium chloride, which is an electrolyte, it dissociates into ions as given over here. Sodium chloride. This is a strong static force of attraction holding the sodium and the chloride ions because of the high diatic constant of water. Water is a polar solvent molecule, so it will break this electrostatic force of attraction and separate the ions into sodium ion and chloride ion in aqueous solution. Now, polar covalent compounds may also dissociate into ions in the same way and act as electrolytes. Due to the presence of oppositely charged ions, the solution of an electrolyte conducts electric current. That is important. So, further classification, we can talk about electrolytes to be either strong electrolytes or weak electrolytes. Now, under strong electrolytes, the electrolytes which are completely or almost completely ionized in solutions are called strong electrolytes. These are true ionic compounds and ionized to an extent of almost 100%, almost not 100, almost 100% in solution. Examples can be sodium chloride, potassium bromide, ammonium chloride, hydrochloric acid, nitric acid, sulfuric acid, etc. For example, if you take 1.0 mole of potassium chloride, if it is dissolved in 1 liter of water, 1 liter, this volume of water is important, the solvent. The resulting solution will contain 1 mole of potassium ions and 1 mole of chloride ions. And practically, there will be no unionized potassium chloride molecules. The ions remain solvated in solution. They remain surrounded by the water molecules. Since the solution of a strong electrolyte possesses only a very few unionized molecules at equilibrium, the equation for ionization reactions for strong electrolytes are represented by using a single arrow directed to the right as shown below. You can see on page 453, potassium chloride, strong electrolyte, okay, ammonium chloride salt solution, strong electrolyte, hydrochloric acid in the water, strong electrolyte. So what you call irreversible arrow pointing in the right direction. So irreversible reactions. But if you look at weak electrolytes, the next one is weak electrolytes. If you see at weak electrolytes, the electrolytes which do not dissociate ionize much in solution are called weak electrolytes. Okay, they dissociate partially. These are mostly polar covalent compounds and are weakly ionized in solution. For example, if you talk about acetic acid or ammonium hydroxide or formic acid or hydrocyanic acid or any organic compound, they are weak in nature, weak electrolytes. The solution of weak electrolyte contains both the ions as well as the undissociated molecules, and an equilibrium exists between them. For example, acetic acid or ammonium hydroxide solution, a reversible arrow is used to denote the equilibrium state. Now, due to the presence of an equilibrium between the what you call undissociated molecules and ions, the equations for the dissociation of weak electrolytes are written with double-headed arrows, as shown over here. Okay, that was with regard to over here uh, weak electrolytes. Now, moving further to non-electrolytes. Now, this non-electrolytes, it's better to have some idea about this also. Apart from strong and weak, we can talk about non-electrolytes because these are substances which dissolve in water. They will dissolve in water, like we talk about glucose, sucrose, fructose, okay, but they will not ionize in the solution. Such substances are called non-electrolytes because of ions absent in them. Due to the absence of ions, the solutions of non-electrolytes do not conduct electric current. Sugar, urea, glucose, glycerin are some very good examples of non-electrolytes. Okay, so after this, let us learn, try to understand a very, very important law in chemistry, which is called Ostwald's dilution law. So here, ionization of weak electrolytes. Under this heading, we will learn what is Ostwald's dilution law. Now, with increase of dilution, the number of ions also increases. That you keep in mind. So on this basis, the weak electrolytes are partially ionized in solution. The solution of a weak electrolyte contains both the undissociated molecules, okay, as well as the ions, and a dynamic equilibrium exists between them. Dynamic in nature, that means the reactants are forming the products and the products are forming the reactants at the same rate. Though the system is in equilibrium, since there is a frequent change of the reactants into the products and the products into the reactants, it is said to be dynamic in nature. Now, to understand this properly, the ionization of weak electrolytes, let us consider the dissociation of weak acid, acetic acid. Okay, in aqueous solution, it dissociates. Say, if I take acetic acid and put in water, it will dissociate to give me hydronium ions and acetate ions. Okay, if you apply the law of mass action or law of chemical equilibrium, you can write the expression for the equilibrium constant in this manner: H2O plus concentration of acetate ion, the product divided by the reactant H2O. Now, here this K is called the equilibrium constant. Okay, water acts as a solvent and its concentration can be regarded as constant or unity. Therefore, we can write Ka. Ka means equilibrium constant of the acid that is equal to K multiplied by concentration of water because it is a constant. So we have this expression over here now. Now this Ka is a new equilibrium constant and it is referred to as ionization constant or dissociation constant of what? Of the acid, because here we are dissolving or solving acetic acid in water. Now, after this, if you look at the second column over here, under study, the suffix a, Ka, refers to acid. We can use a suffix b in case of a base. If I use a base, like for example, ammonium hydroxide, that time we have to write Kb, which means dissociation constant of the base. Now, let us understand this generally by taking a general case. Suppose there is Ab is a weak electrolyte, say acid or a base or a neutral compound, which when dissolved in water dissociate partially to give A plus and B minus ions. After that, let C be the initial concentration of the electrolyte Ab in the solution and let alpha, this is alpha, okay, be its degree of dissociation. As we have seen earlier, degree of dissociation is the fraction of total of moles which undergo dissociation and is given by this formula. So better learn this formula. Alpha, the degree of dissociation is number of moles actually undergoing dissociation or ionization divided by total number of moles. So very, very important formula over here. Now, since the dissociation of an electrolyte involves the process of ionization, the degree of dissociation may also be referred to as degree of ionization. Same thing. Degree of dissociation and degree of ionization mean almost the same thing, and the symbol is alpha. So in the above present case, for every mole of Ab initially taken, alpha moles of Ab dissociate to give alpha moles of A plus and alpha moles of B minus. Now, since the initial concentration of Ab is C, we can write this equation once more. Ab aqueous reversible arrow, A plus aqueous plus B minus aqueous. So look at this very carefully and try to understand. Initial concentration. In the beginning, we have taken concentration of AB, the substance, to be C. Initially, when the equilibrium is not reached, when the reaction is not started yet, the initial concentration of ion A plus is 0, B minus is 0. But when the equilibrium has reached, and if alpha is the degree of dissociation, so the concentration of A plus will be C alpha, and the concentration of B minus will be C alpha, and the concentration of AB at equilibrium will be C1 minus alpha. So this is one technique you have to remember over here, because this C over here, concentration of AB is C. Okay, so that's why you have to multiply C 1 minus alpha, over here C alpha, and there also C alpha. Okay, so at equilibrium, the concentration of AB is C 1 minus alpha, concentration of A plus is C alpha, concentration of B minus is also C alpha. So if you apply the law of mass action and the law of chemical equilibrium to the above general example over here, we get K. Okay, we don't know whether it is acid or base, that's why we write simply K, or we can write Kc also. Okay, equilibrium constant in terms of concentration. So A plus, concentration of A plus into concentration of B minus divided by concentration of AB, and substitute these values over here. Substitute these values in this equation expression and get a relationship between K concentration and the degree of dissociation. So it is coming to C alpha square C1 minus alpha. Now, in case of a very weak electrolyte, the degree of ionization alpha is very, very small as compared to 1. This alpha is very, very small as compared to 1. So here 1 minus alpha is taken, approximated assumption is made over here. 1 minus alpha is taken to be equal to 1. So therefore we can modify this equation. K is equal to C alpha square by C. Okay, C alpha square by C 1 minus alpha. So we're getting over here K is equal to C alpha square, or we can say alpha square, because this C and this C is cancelling. Okay, we can talk about that also. So alpha square is K by C, so alpha is root under K by C. So this is the law which we are talking about. Okay, so if the value of dissociation constant is known, if the value of K is known, or this alpha is known, the degree of dissociation of the weak acid electrolyte can be calculated with the help of the above equation 7.16. Okay, now based on this equation 7.16, alpha is under root K by C, because this C stands for the concentration of the substance. Okay, a very important generalization known as Ostwald dilution law was formulated. So this law is obtained by this relation. Alpha is proportional to 1 by root under C, because capital K is a constant. So the degree of dissociation of a weak electrolyte is inversely proportional to the square root of its concentration or dilution. So on this basis, the law is stated over here. The above relation implies that the degree of dissociation of a weak electrolyte is inversely proportional to the square root of its molar concentration, the concentration of the substance. Now, after that, the law was stated. The degree of dissociation of weak electrolyte is directly proportional to the square root of its dilution. Dilution means 1 by root C. If you take it up, it becomes dilution. Okay, so based on this, the Ostwald dilution law was formulated. Now, the law implies that as the dilution is increased, underline this sentence in the textbook. This law over here, this law implies that as the dilution is increased, the degree of dissociation of a weak electrolyte also increases. Learn it just now. The Ostwald's dilution law means that as the dilution is increased, if you make an electrolyte more and more dilute, the degree of dissociation of the weak electrolyte also increases. That means more and more ions will be found in the electrolytic solution or the weak electrolyte. So please learn it just now only, this one. The Ostwald's dilution law states that the degree of dissociation of weak electrolyte is directly proportional to the square root of its dilution. 1 by root C, it is called square root, it's called dilution. Okay, and simply C is called molar concentration. So in other language, we can say the law implies that as the dilution is increased, For weak electrolyte, the degree of dissociation of weak electrolyte also increases, directly proportional, increases. So with dilution, the degree of dissociation also increases. Now, based on this, there are simple numericals to be done. Okay, so I will just explain this numerical example 7.11. The similar numericals will be asked in the examination. So they are asking us calculate the degree of ionization and concentration of hydronium ions. This is concentration of what? Hydronium ions of a 0.15 m acetic acid solution. So there are two things to be found out. Degree of ionization also, as well as concentration of hydronium ions of a 0.15 molar acetic acid solution. The dissociation constant, that means alpha, is given. The dissociation constant, that is capital K, we can talk about, of acetic acid is given 1.8 in 10 power minus 5. The K is called dissociation constant of acetic acid, K into concentration of water. So here the ionization of acetic acid can be represented by this equation, and let alpha be the degree of ionization or dissociation. For every mole of acid, alpha moles of it to dissociate to give same mole, alpha moles of hydronium and alpha moles of acetylene. Therefore, for a given concentration, that is 0.15 m, that is 0.15 is the strength of acetic acid. Okay, so therefore, we can write the equation in this manner. Initial concentration is 0.15. Initial for hydronium is 0, acetylene is 0, and at equilibrium the concentration becomes 0.15 into alpha, 0.15 into alpha, and always 0.15 1 minus alpha. So if we apply the law of mass action, law of equilibrium to this equation over here, we get this relation Ka, because Ka means what? Ka means K into concentration of water. Okay, so this is Ka, dissolution constant of the acid. So now we can put the values, because Ka value we know. Ka value we know. It is 1.8 10 power minus 5. So that's over here. Ka means what? Dissociation constant of acetic acid. That is Ka. So put the values and get a relationship like this, and simplify it, get the value of alpha. It is solved over here. Since acetic acid is a very weak electrolyte, therefore 1 minus alpha is taken to be 1. So making that assumption over here, this 1 minus alpha is taken as simply 1, because it is a weak electrolyte. The value of alpha is very, very small. Okay, so that's why we get over here 1 minus alpha is 1, therefore we can write 1.8 to the power minus 5 is 0.15 alpha square. Simplify this, alpha becomes equal to this 1.8 10 power minus 5 divided by 0.15 raised to the power of half, because it comes under square root. So getting the answer 1.09 into 10 power of minus 2, that is the value of degree of dissociation. After that, putting this value of alpha in the equation, the concentration of hydronium ions can be obtained. It is obtained by multiplying 0.15 into alpha, because concentration of hydronium ion is what? 0.15 into alpha. So put the values over there, you get the answer. So 1.63 in 10 power minus 3 moles per liter, which is the answer. Okay, so this example I have explained you. In a similar way, all the examples also, I request you all to go through them. Like example 7.12, I'll read the question only. Okay, please go through the working on your own. At 25 degrees Celsius or 298 Kelvin, 0.01 m molar solution of ammonium hydroxide is 4.2% ionized. Calculate the ionization constant of the base. That means calculate the value of Kb. This is 4.2% ionized, means alpha. Alpha, it is 4.2 by 100 or 0.04. This is given. Okay. Degree of dissociation is given. So you have to find the value of Kb. So this C is given, the concentration, 0.01 m over here of the solution. Alpha value is 4.2%, so divide it by 100 to get in correct number, and then apply the formula as write on the equation. Okay, initial concentration is given already, 0.08 initially. At equilibrium it will be 0.01 multiplied by alpha value is 0.042, and then put the values and get finally use the law of mass action, law of equilibrium to the equation, write down the expression for the value of Kb, put the values wherever required, and get the answer, that is the value of Kb. Okay, so you try to understand this. Okay, now after this, we'll be moving to the next concept of acids and bases. So under these concepts of acid and bases, which is called what you call acid base equilibrium. This will be explained on the basis of Arrhenius concept, which is better known as water ion concept. Okay. Now here, under the concept of acid and bases, which will be explained by taking the help of water ion concept. Here, let me tell you that uh, the criterion for a substance to act as an acid or a base has been a matter of much discussion among the chemists. Now, Boyle, he told something, okay, and Rolle, he told something. Lavoisier came up with something. Davy also came up with something. And Lebix later on defined acids as compounds which contain one or more replaceable hydrogen ions. Thus, there has been a lot of discussion over the definition of acid and a base. So, here in the forthcoming session, we will talk about Arrhenius concept. We shall study important concept of acid and base based on the acid-base equilibrium whenever it is established. So, today we believe and follow Arrhenius. We follow Arrhenius, which is called the protonic concept also. Sometimes we refer over there, Arrhenius concept, water ion concept. And after this concept, after the limitations of this concept, another concept came into formulation, which was known as Bronsted-Lowry concept. Okay, but we'll first try to understand the Arrhenius concept. Now here, under the Arrhenius concept, he defined acids and bases in terms of the ions given by them. Acids, they produce hydrogen ions. Okay, whereas base, it produces hydroxyl ions. So it was on this concept we're talking about Arrhenius concept, where acids produce hydrogen ions and bases, they produce what? Hydroxyl ions. So according to this concept, the acid base neutralization process is actually the combination of H plus ions and OH minus ions to form water molecules. So if you react an acid with a base, it produces salt and water, because from the acid H plus and from the base OH minus is combining to form water molecules. So that is how we are trying to understand according to the concept over here. But remember that this Arrhenius concept, it has merits also. At the same time, the limitations, demerits are also there. It cannot explain so many things. That is how and that is why we were forced to go through the Bronsted-Lowry concept, so which is better known as protonic concept. Now, in this year, Bronsted and Lowry proposed a more general concept of acid and bases. These two fellows defined acid and bases in terms of H plus ions or protons. An H plus ion is actually called a proton. Remember that, put that in your mind properly. Now, according to this Bronsted and Lowry, acids are proton donors, while bases are proton acceptors. So it is to be noted that an H plus ion is simply a proton. The neutral hydrogen atom contains only one proton and one electron. H plus ion is formed when a neutral hydrogen atom loses an electron. Therefore, what is left in the form of H plus ion is actually a proton. So, due to high charge density, it should not have an independent existence. It is believed that in aqueous solution, it combines with the water molecule very happily association to form, with the help of a dative bond, to form a hydrated ion, which is properly called hydronium ion, which you have seen in class 10 also. So therefore, Bronsted and Lowry concept is a wider, it covers so many what do you call defects in the previous theories. A concept which is wider and is not restricted only to neutral molecules. Even the ions can be regarded as acids and bases in this concept. So accordingly, an acid, according to this concept, the molecules, cations or anions which have a tendency to donate H plus ions to any other substance are known as acids. So now this is the proper definition of an acid. What are acids according to this concept, Bronsted-Lowry concept? Are molecules, they can be cations, they can be anions, which generally have a tendency to donate H plus ions or protons to any other substance, then it will be regarded as acid. So some molecular acid examples are here: hydrochloric acid, acetic acid, okay, perchloric acid giving H plus ions, okay, in one way or the other. If we're talking about the cationic acids, the cations behaving as acids, hexaaqua ferric ion, okay, hexaaqua aluminum ion over here, it is dissociating to give a proton. Anionic acid, okay, dihydrogen phosphoric acid, this is HCO, HCO3 minus, it's also an acid, anionic acids. They are giving H plus, so they are behaving as acid. So Try to remember examples of molecular acids, examples of cationic acids, examples of anionic acid, and the definition. Why are these called acids? Because they have a tendency to donate H plus ions or protons to any other substance. Now, here there are some examples. So, on the same theory, according to Bronsted and Lowry theory, bases are those molecules, cations or anions, which have a tendency again. They will not release protons, they will accept protons or H plus ions from other substances. So examples are here: ammonia, okay, accepting protons. See, amine is accepting proton, okay, pyridine is accepting proton, cationic bases, see, accepting protons, anionic bases accepting protons to form species or molecule substances. So any substance which can accept protons, they are bases. Any substance which can release protons, produce protons, or give protons are acids. Okay, so based on this, we're going to try and understand what is a conjugate pair and a conjugate pair of an acid or a conjugate pair of a base. So this is very important. Try to pay attention. Now, if you look at conjugate pair of acid and bases over here, an acid and a base are related to each other. Every acid changes into a base after releasing one proton, and every base on accepting a proton changes into an acid. So, acid and bases thus exist in pairs, and these pairs are called conjugate pairs. A conjugate may be termed as the chemical species that differs from the other only to the extent of transferred proton. Thus, the conjugate acid differs from its conjugate base by one proton and vice versa. Look at this example. One good example on your screen. So, hydrochloric acid in water solution, it is producing hydronium ion and a chloride ion in aqueous solution. So here remember, HCl releases a proton and changes into Cl minus ion. Therefore, HCl is an acid and Cl minus is its conjugate base. So HCl is the acid and this Cl minus is the conjugate base. Water molecule accepts the proton given by HCl and changes into H3O plus ion. Therefore, water is acting as the base and hydronium ion is acting as the conjugate acid. So that is how you have to understand over here. So it has been explained over here in this diagram over here. Acid 1, conjugate base. Base 2, this is conjugate acid. Okay. So that is how you have to understand conjugate pairs. Some more examples are given on the screen over here on the screen. Nitric acid, okay, acid conjugate base, base conjugate acid. So there are plenty of examples over here. Go through this example and try to understand the definition. Okay, now over here the acids like hydrochloric acid or nitric acid or perchloric acid can give up to only one proton. They give only one proton. Now such acids which can produce one proton to another substance, they are normally called monoprotic acids. Otherwise, if the acids can donate or produce two protons, they will be called what? They will be called diprotic. While those which can donate three protons, they are called triprotic acids. So example of diprotic, it is sulfuric acid, and triprotic, it is phosphoric acid. Okay, so try to go through this table 7.2, which is a very important table. See, this will make your idea clear about the conjugate pairs of acid and the conjugate pair of bases. Okay, so here hydrochloric acid, its conjugate basis Cl minus. Nitric acid, conjugate basis nitrate. Perchloric acid, conjugate basis perchlorate, and so on. Similarly for the acids also here. Okay. Now, what is neutralization? According to the Bronsted-Lowry concept, what is neutralization? Tell me. Can anybody tell me what is neutralization? According to what you have learned in classes 8 and 9 and 10.
When acid and base react to produce salt and
Yes,
water.
acid and a base react to produce salt and water. That is called neutralization. Very true, correct. I am happy with the answer. But now, according to this Bronsted and Lowry concept, it is the process of transfer of proton from where? From where to where? From acid to a base. So, this comes under neutralization process. Some examples are given. Transfer, remember, neutralization process happens whenever there is a transfer of proton, H plus ion, from the acid to to the base, then that comes under the process which is neutralization 2. Okay. Now some examples are here. Hydrochloric acid to the base, ammonium ion, sulfide ion, bisulfate ion, ammonia. Okay, so it is forming ammonium sulfate salt, ammonium chloride salt. Okay, okay. Then a neutralization process reaction always proceeds in the direction of formation of weaker acid and a weaker base. So whenever a neutralization reaction happens, the acid formed is weak and the base formed is also weak. Now this reaction proceeds in the forward direction because in this direction a weak acid hydronium ion and a weak base Cl minus ions are formed. The neutralization reaction in the non-aqueous protic solvents like liquid ammonia, sulfuric acid can be written in the similar way over here. See, ammonia molecule gives ammonium ion, which is the acid conjugate, and the base from ammonia NH2, that is amine. It is forming what? It is forming a neutralization product, that is ammonia. So here also one neutralization reaction. Similarly, H3SO4 plus an acid, conjugate acid, and the conjugate base forming a neutralization product, that is sulfuric acid. So based on this concept, a substance can act both as an acid and a base if it can donate as well as can accept a proton. So if a substance can donate as well as can accept a proton at the same time, it can behave, it can act as an acid as well as a base. Okay, so some examples are here: acid 1, base 2, conjugate base. The acid is here, conjugate base. The base is here, conjugate acid is here. That is the pair. Okay, so this is what you have to try to understand. Now, coming down to the strength of acids and bases. With regard to the strength of acids and bases, over here, the strength of an acid is determined by what? By its tendency to lose proton. Okay, higher the tendency of an acid to lose the proton, greater will be its strength. Okay, that's why inorganic acids like hydrochloric acid or nitric acid or sulfuric acid, they possess very high tendency to lose protons. Therefore, naturally they are strong acids. Otherwise, on the other hand, if you see like acids like acetic acid, formic acid, hydrocyanic acid possess a very little tendency to lose protons and are regarded as weak acids. So therefore, the strength of a base is determined by its tendency to gain protons. So on this basis, it has been explained over here. The bases like acetate ion or cyanide, the negatively charged ions acting as bases because they are proton acceptors. Hydroxyl, ammonia are strong bases because they possess very high tendency to gain protons. Whereas the bases like Cl minus or nitrate or sulfate, they are weak bases because why? They have little tendency to accept protons. So the ions are also talked to be as acidic or basic nature. So on this basis, the conjugate of a strong acid is always a weak base. A very important sentence. Underline that. The conjugate of a strong acid. Strong acid's conjugate is a weak base. And the conjugate of a weak acid is a strong base. And it goes applies the same for bases also. Okay, it applies the similar in a similar way for bases also. Okay, so based on this, weak acid is there, the conjugate base which is formed, it is strong. You can talk about that. Okay, then coming to the relative strength of acids, as mentioned, the strength of an acid may be defined as the concentration of hydronium ions, which we have learned earlier in class 10, in its aqueous solution at a particular temperature. So if you're talking about the dissociation of an acid having general formula Ha, it is producing hydronium ions. According to the law of mass action law of chemistry, if we apply the law over here, then we're getting this relationship over here. So, and since concentration of water is taken as unity, so this goes away. So from the above equation, you can get the dissociation constant, that is Ka will be equal to concentration of hydronium ion divided by concentration of the acid. Okay, for a particular, to measure its strength. Okay, so the strength of two acids can be compared by comparing the values of their ionization constant. And an acid with a higher value, underline this also. An acid which has a higher value of Ka is a stronger acid. But if the value of Ka is smaller, it will be a weaker acid. For example, the ionization constant of acetic acid and HF is given over here 290 at 25 degrees Celsius. For acetic acid, it is 10 power minus 5. But over here for hydrofluoric acid, it is 10 power minus 4. So this one looks higher. Since the ionization constant of HF is higher than that of acetic acid, HF is a stronger acid as compared to acetic. So we can compare we can compare the dissociation constant of the acid given to find out whether the given acid is a strong acid or a weak acid. Okay, from calculation. Now we'll be learning about calculations of hydronium ion concentration and degree of dissociation. This part I will do in the next class. Okay, so but before that, please hang on over there because I need to record your attendance. I will do the numericals based on the calculations of concentration of hydronium ion and the degree of dissociation in the next class. Am I clear, all of you? Am I clear?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we stop our class here only, and then I will just record the attendance first, and then you may leave the class. Okay. The attendance is recorded. Attendance recorded. Okay. Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
Thank you, sir.